Here's what I need you to understand right now, and I mean right now, because if you miss this, you will spend the next decade wondering how the world changed underneath your feet without anyone warning you. The most consequential power shift in modern history is happening at this exact moment. Not on a battlefield, not in a press conference, not in any headline you scrolled past this morning. It is happening in silence, in boardrooms in Beijing, in oil terminals in the Persian Gulf, in the quiet, calculated patience of a civilization that has been playing long games since before the Roman Empire existed, and almost nobody is talking about it. The bombs falling on Tehran are not the story. The missiles screaming over the Gulf are not the story. The Strait of Hormuz, the aircraft carriers, the fire and the fury, that is not the story. The story, the real story, the one that will define the next 50 years of human civilization, is what China is doing right now. Or more precisely, what China is not doing. China is not firing missiles. China is not threatening anyone. China is not sending troops. China is sitting quietly, watching, and while it watches, it is winning. Winning in a way so deep, so structural, so permanent, that by the time most people realize what happened, it will already be over. Let me show you exactly how. Before we go further, I want to address something directly, because the comments section demands it. Every time I present this analysis, certain people write, Chinese propaganda. He always defends China. Typical bias. Here is my response, and I will only say it once. I am an analyst. My job is to look at data, identify patterns, and follow the logic wherever it leads, even when it leads somewhere uncomfortable. So here is my challenge to every single person watching right now. If my data is wrong, tell me. Write in the comments, "Sir, your data is incorrect. Here is the correct data." I will read it. I will verify it. I will correct myself publicly if I am wrong. But if you cannot find a single error in the data, then do not attack my identity. Attack the argument. Because attacking the person instead of the argument is not thinking. It is the avoidance of thinking. And right now, the stakes are too high for that. Also, before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Drop your city. I want to see how far this conversation is reaching, because what we are discussing today affects every single one of you, regardless of where you live. Whether you are in Lagos or London, Dubai or Detroit, Jakarta or Johannesburg, this analysis is about your future. So let me know your city. And if this breakdown opened your eyes, hit that like button and subscribe, because we go this deep every single time. Now, let us begin. To understand what China is doing, you first have to understand the game being played. And the game is not complicated. It is actually very simple. It is a game about oil, about who controls oil, about what happens to the country that controls oil, and about what happens to the country that loses control of it. What is the single most important resource in the world today? Some people say semiconductors, some say water, some say rare earth minerals. But if you think carefully, with cold strategic logic, the answer is still oil. Because oil runs everything. It runs factories, it runs ships, it runs trucks, it runs aircraft, it runs armies. Without oil, the global economy does not slow down, it stops. Without oil, wars cannot be fought. Without oil, modern civilization as we know it ceases to function within weeks. And here is the critical insight that changes everything. The country that controls the flow of oil does not just control energy, it controls the global economy. It controls the behavior of nations. It controls who grows wealthy and who collapses into poverty. It controls the entire international order. This is what America understood after World War II. And this is why they built the petrodollar system. Let me explain this carefully, because it is the foundation of everything that follows. After World War II, the United States made a deal with Saudi Arabia. The deal was elegant in its simplicity. Saudi Arabia sells all of its oil exclusively in US dollars, not British pounds, not French francs, not any other currency on earth, US dollars only. In exchange, America guarantees the survival of the Saudi royal family and protects the kingdom militarily. Full stop. Now, why does this matter? Why does the currency of oil transactions change anything? Because if every nation on earth must buy oil in US dollars, then every nation on earth must acquire US dollars. And if every nation must acquire dollars, then America can print as many dollars as it needs, and the world will absorb them. This means America can run deficits that would destroy any other economy. It can borrow at virtually unlimited scale. It can fund the most expensive military apparatus in human history. It can build a financial empire on Wall Street that touches every corner of the globe. This is the actual secret of American power. Not aircraft carriers, not nuclear warheads, not Silicon Valley. The secret is the petrodollar. The dollar is the oil currency. And because the dollar is the oil currency, the dollar rules the world. And because the dollar rules the world, America rules the world. Understand that, and you understand everything that follows. So now we ask the obvious next question. Who is the single greatest threat to the petrodollar system right now? China. I need you to think about this like a strategist, not like a journalist looking for a headline, not like a politician looking for applause, like a strategist. Cold, analytical, following the logic wherever it leads. China is the largest oil importer on earth. Every single day, China imports approximately 11 million barrels of oil. 11 million barrels every day. China's entire industrial economy, its cities, its military, its manufacturing base that supplies the entire world runs on imported oil. And for the past decade, China has been executing a quiet but devastating attack on the petrodollar system. Here is how. Because Iran is under American sanctions, it cannot sell its oil on open markets, so it sells quietly to China at a significant discount, and China pays in Chinese yuan, not dollars. Iran gets revenue, China gets cheap oil, and every barrel of that transaction happens completely outside the dollar system. Before this war started, China was importing approximately 1.38 million barrels of Iranian oil every single day. That is 13% of China's total oil imports, all priced in yuan, not dollars. Much of it moved under false documentation. Ships carrying Iranian crude would stop in Malaysia or Indonesia, change their paperwork, and sail to Chinese ports labeled as Malaysian or Indonesian oil. China also had Venezuela. Venezuela holds the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. Venezuela, like Iran, is under American sanctions. Venezuela, like Iran, was selling oil to China at a discount, priced in yuan, not dollars. China had constructed a beautiful, elegant, and strategically lethal system. Cheap oil from sanctioned nations, paid in yuan, no dollars required. Every barrel traded in yuan is a barrel that does not need dollars. And if enough barrels are traded in yuan, dollar dominance begins to erode, slowly, then faster, then catastrophically. The Americans understood this, and this, pay very close attention here. This is the real reason for this war. The official justifications are well known: Iran's nuclear program, the threat to Israel, support for terrorism. These are real issues, but they are not the primary strategic driver. The primary strategic driver is the petrodollar. Look at the sequence of events in the 2 months before this war began. In January, the United States moved against Venezuela's government and asserted control over Venezuelan oil operations, severing China's Venezuelan oil supply. Then in February, America launched this war against Iran, severing China's Iranian oil supply. In 60 days, the United States cut off more than 20% of China's total daily oil imports. That is not a coincidence, that is a strategy. This war against Iran is simultaneously a war against China's energy supply and against China's yuan-based oil trade. The goal is to strangle China's economic engine by eliminating its access to discounted, dollar-free oil. A journalist stops here and writes the headline, "America strikes back at China through Iran war." But a strategist asks the next question, the only question that actually matters: is it working? When this war started, the Americans expected China to panic. They expected scrambling, economic disruption, visible weakness. If you lose 20% of your oil imports suddenly, That is not a minor inconvenience. That is a potential economic emergency. Here is what actually happened. China did not panic. China did not scramble. China had prepared. China had been quietly, methodically building one of the largest strategic petroleum reserves in human history. Dalian, Zhuhai, massive underground storage facilities across multiple provinces. Before the first American missile was fired, China had enough stored oil to sustain its economy for months without a single barrel of new imports. China knew this day was coming. China built for it. China also had Russia. Russia already supplies over 17% of China's oil imports, priced in Yuan, sanctioned by the West. When Iranian and Venezuelan supply was cut, China turned to Russia. Russia, desperate for revenue and politically isolated from Western markets, was delighted to sell more. China's factories kept running. Transportation costs rose approximately 10% month over month. There was friction, there were price increases, but there was no collapse, no emergency, no visible panic, because China had already war-gamed this exact scenario and built the infrastructure to survive it. The strangling strategy did not work the way America intended, but here is where the story becomes genuinely alarming. While America believed it was attacking China through this war, it was simultaneously doing something far more consequential. It was destroying its own credibility in the most strategically critical region on Earth and creating a vacuum that China is now quietly and methodically moving to fill. Think about the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain. These nations are the living foundation of the petrodollar system. They sell oil in dollars. They invest their oil revenues in American banks, American treasury bonds, American equities. This is called petrodollar recycling, and this recycling is what keeps the American financial system operational. Without it, the entire architecture of dollar dominance begins to decompose. Now look at what this war has done to those Gulf states. Iranian drones have struck the Fujairah oil industrial zone in the UAE. Iranian missiles targeted the Ras Laffan facility in Qatar, the largest natural gas installation on the planet. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Bahrain have all absorbed Iranian strikes. Schools in the UAE are conducting remote learning because of ongoing attack threats. The Gulf states are not frustrated. They are not annoyed. They are terrified. And they are asking one question. The question that keeps the architects of the petrodollar system awake at night. If America cannot protect us right now, when it has deployed its most powerful assets and is fully committed to this war, what happens in 5 years, in 10 years? Can we truly stake the survival of our governments, our wealth, our dynasties on American reliability? That question, that doubt, that is the crack in the foundation. And cracks once opened do not close on their own. I want to introduce a concept that is essential to understanding everything happening right now. In geopolitics, what matters most is not what you can do, it is what others believe you can do. This is called credibility. And credibility, once lost, is nearly impossible to rebuild. America's credibility in the Middle East is being systematically destroyed by this war. Not through battlefield defeats, but through the failure to achieve stated objectives. The war was supposed to be decisive. Iran was supposed to be brought to its knees quickly. The Strait of Hormuz was supposed to be cleared. Iranian military capacity was supposed to be degraded beyond recovery. None of this has happened on the promised timeline. Iran is still standing, still fighting. The strait remains contested. Iranian precision drones are still reaching Gulf state infrastructure. Every day this continues. Every American promise that goes unfulfilled, every Iranian drone that gets through, the Gulf states recalculate, and their recalculation is moving in one direction, toward China. Here is exactly what China is doing, not in vague terms, in specific, concrete, documented actions. First, China has positioned itself as the voice of global responsibility. While American bombers fly sorties over Tehran, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is calling every capital involved, Tehran, Jerusalem, Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Moscow, calling for ceasefires, calling for negotiations, calling for dialogue. Think about what this does to China's image in the Gulf states that are being bombed. America brought the conditions that caused this suffering. China is calling for it to stop. Which partner looks more like a responsible global power? Second, the White House itself, in an almost astonishing admission, acknowledged that high-level US-China discussions contributed to the ceasefire negotiations. Donald Trump stated publicly that China helped bring Iran to the negotiating table. Read that again. The President of the United States publicly credited China with helping stop a war that America started. China has maneuvered itself into the role of global peacemaker, while America plays the role of global war maker. Third, and this is the move that will define the next generation of geopolitics, China is now in active dialogue with every Gulf state, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and it is offering them something America structurally cannot offer: a relationship without conditions, trade without demands for political reform, investment without threats of regime change, security cooperation without the indignity of foreign military bases dictating your internal affairs. The Gulf states need buyers for their oil. China is the world's largest buyer. The Gulf states need security guarantees. China is offering partnership. The Gulf states need an economy that functions when American politics turn volatile. China is offering stability. This is not propaganda. This is structural reality. Now I need to walk you through the long-term consequences, because this is where most analysis ends too soon. Short-term, China absorbed pain. Oil supply disrupted, costs elevated, economic friction real. But this game is not measured in months. This game is measured in decades. Medium term, America is depleting its most critical military assets in this conflict: Patriot missile batteries, THAAD systems, F-35 sorties, precision munitions. Every interceptor fired over the Persian Gulf is one fewer interceptor available in the Pacific. Every advanced weapon system deployed to the Middle East is one fewer system available to defend Taiwan, and these systems cannot be rapidly replaced. The American defense industrial complex, as I have detailed before, is optimized for profit extraction, not rapid production. A Patriot battery takes years to build and deploy. Precision munition stockpiles take years to replenish. China is watching every single engagement of this war with the focus of a chess grandmaster studying an opponent's game. Every American weapon system that underperforms, every tactic that fails, every logistical vulnerability that emerges, China is cataloging all of it because China knows the Taiwan confrontation is coming, and China wants to know precisely what America can and cannot do when that moment arrives. Long term, the Gulf states drift toward China, not dramatically, not all at once, but consistently and irreversibly. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 economic modernization program is deeply tied to Chinese investment and Chinese markets. The UAE is already among China's most vital trading partners. Qatar sells liquefied natural gas to China under long-term contracts. These relationships will deepen after this war, and as they deepen, something else happens. Oil transactions begin shifting to Yuan. Not all of them, not immediately, but incrementally. And incrementally is all that is required, because the petrodollar system does not collapse in a single dramatic moment. It erodes, transaction by transaction, percentage point by percentage point, until one day the tipping point is crossed and the dollar's dominance is no longer recoverable. Let me give you numbers, because numbers cut through rhetoric. In 2015, essentially 0% of global oil trade was denominated in yuan. By 2024, before this war began, approaching 20% of China's own oil imports were being priced in yuan. China launched the yuan-denominated oil futures contract on the Shanghai International Energy Exchange. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and an increasing number of Middle Eastern states are using it. And here is the move that almost every analyst missed entirely. When America briefly lifted certain sanctions on Iranian oil at the start of this conflict, attempting to stabilize global oil prices, Iran generated $14 billion in oil revenue in a remarkably short period, Iran's entire annual military budget is approximately $10 billion. America's own strategic economic decision made Iran richer than its military budget in a single stroke, extended Iran's ability to sustain the conflict, and deepened China's connections to Iranian oil revenue flows. Every move America makes to weaken China's energy access is simultaneously pushing China to accelerate its own energy independence. China produces more solar panels than the rest of the world combined. China has more electric vehicles on its roads than any other nation. China is constructing nuclear power plants at a pace no other country can match. Every time America threatens China's oil supply, China responds not by panicking, but by investing further in the infrastructure that will eventually make it impervious to oil-based economic coercion. America is tightening a grip on an adversary that is actively growing beyond the reach of that grip. Here is what I believe happens next. This is analytical projection, based on historical patterns and game theory, not prophecy, but based on the structural logic we have walked through. The trajectory is clear. This war ends. It must end. The economic cost of sustained conflict at this scale is politically unsustainable inside the United States. Oil prices are affecting ordinary American households. Congressional support for open-ended engagement is already fracturing. And Iran is not surrendering, and the conditions that will produce surrender do not appear to exist. When this war ends, America emerges structurally weaker, weapons stockpiles partially depleted, Gulf state alliances damaged and requiring extensive repair, credibility as a reliable security guarantor reduced, petrodollar system under greater pressure than at any point since Bretton Woods. China emerges structurally stronger, having demonstrated strategic patience under pressure, having built relationships on both sides of the conflict, having accumulated irreplaceable intelligence on American military performance, having accelerated its own energy independence, and having positioned itself in the eyes of the global South as the responsible, peaceful, constructive alternative to American hegemony. The Gulf states begin genuinely diversifying their strategic relationships, not abandoning America entirely, but no longer treating the American relationship as the only relationship that matters. As those relationships diversify, Yuan-denominated oil trade grows. As Yuan oil trade grows, dollar dominance diminishes. As dollar dominance diminishes, the financial architecture that underwrites American global power begins to decompose. Over 10 to 20 years, not overnight, but steadily and structurally, the petrodollar system weakens. And the American century, the extraordinary period of U.S. global dominance that began in 1945, begins its irreversible conclusion. China achieves all of this without firing a single shot, without deploying a single soldier, without spending a single yuan on warfare. Now I want to give you the deepest insight of this entire analysis, because everything I've described so far is about strategy and geopolitics. But the deeper truth is about something more fundamental. It is about the nature of power itself in the 21st century. In the 20th century, power was military. The most powerful nation was the one with the most bombs, the most tanks, the most soldiers. You demonstrated power by going to war and winning. Military victory was the proof of dominance. In the 21st century, power is structural. The most powerful nation is the one embedded at the center of the most critical global networks, trade networks, energy networks, technology networks, financial networks, infrastructure networks. You do not need to win wars. You need to be so deeply woven into the fabric of the global system that the system cannot function without you. America won the 20th century through military supremacy. China is winning the 21st century through structural indispensability. China's Belt and Road Initiative connects over 140 countries through physical infrastructure, roads, railways, ports, pipelines, fiber optic cables. China's manufacturing base produces 30% of all manufactured goods on Earth. China's rare earth mineral processing controls 80% of global supply for the critical materials that make modern technology possible. China's energy networks through Russia, Iran, Central Asia, and now the drifting Gulf states are being built into a comprehensive alternative to the petrodollar architecture. Military power is visible, dramatic, and expensive. Structural power is quiet, patient, and permanent. America is fighting a military war in the Middle East. China is fighting a structural war for the 21st century. And the structural war is the one that actually determines who runs the world for the next 100 years. Let me bring this together with complete clarity, because I want you to leave this analysis with a picture so precise that you cannot unsee it. America believed it was attacking China's energy supply through this war, and in the short term, it was. Iranian oil disrupted, Venezuelan oil cut off, economic pain real and measurable. On a short-term tactical scorecard, America drew blood, but in the medium and long term, America has created the precise conditions for its own strategic decline. It has damaged the Gulf state alliances that are the living foundation of the petrodollar system. It has depleted military resources that cannot be quickly replaced. It has shattered its credibility as a reliable security guarantor at the exact moment when Gulf states are most desperate for reliability. It has pushed those Gulf states toward China as an alternative partner. It has given China the platform to present itself to the entire world as the responsible, peaceful alternative to American hegemony. And it has accelerated China's drive toward the energy independence that will eventually make American oil-based economic coercion completely ineffective. China achieved all of this without firing a single shot, without spending a single yuan on war, without sacrificing a single soldier. This is not luck. This is strategy. This is what 5,000 years of strategic civilization produces. China is not playing checkers. America is playing checkers. See an enemy, attack the enemy. Direct action. Linear thinking. China is playing Go. The ancient Chinese board game where the objective is not to capture your opponent's pieces, but to surround them, to control territory, to build a position so dominant, so encompassing, that your opponent eventually has no moves left that do not accelerate their own defeat. China is not attacking America directly. China is surrounding America's position, surrounding the petrodollar, surrounding the Gulf state alliances, surrounding the energy networks, building alternative networks, building alternative financial systems, building alternative relationships, waiting with extraordinary patience while America exhausts itself in conflicts that weaken its own position. And every aggressive move America makes gives China more room, more time, more credibility, and more structural advantage. History will record this war not simply as a military confrontation between America and Iran. History will record it as the moment when American global dominance began its genuine, structural, irreversible decline. And when China's century, quiet, patient, and devastating in its strategic depth, began its genuine ascent. And China achieved this not on any battlefield. It achieved this in the quiet offices of Beijing's foreign ministry, in the boardrooms of Chinese state enterprises, in the construction yards building ports and pipelines across 4 continents, in the strategic petroleum reserves stored beneath Chinese soil, and in the patient, calculating, long-horizon mindset of a civilization that has been playing this game and winning this game for 5,000 years. That is today's analysis. If this broke something open for you, if this gave you a framework you did not have before, then that like button is how you tell me it mattered. Subscribe because we do this level of depth consistently. Share this with someone who needs to understand what is actually happening in the world right now, and drop your city in the comments. I genuinely want to see where this conversation is reaching. Whether you are watching from Nairobi or New York, from Shanghai or Sao Paulo, from Lagos or London, tell me where you are. Because the people watching this, thinking this carefully, asking these questions, that is who this is for. Stay sharp. The world is moving fast. We keep up together.